Hi, everyone, and welcome to eLearnChat, where you always learn something new. And today, we're not joined by Leslie Price. She is at Learning Technologies. And Harold's with us. He is handling the video switcher and the mixer live here. And we have a great guest today. You've seen her before. She's been on many times. We've got Jane Bozarth, Director of Research for the eLearning Guild. She'll be right on. Here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation at www.relate.com, your training and video partner.
Hello, I'm Peter Baker. Please visit voiceovermasterclass.com to see details of the training courses I have on offer for new and existing voice talents to further their career by enhancing voice and technical skills, as well as essential marketing tips.
And we are back. And Jane, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. I have a new ukulele.
Yeah.
It's a resonator. It's hot. I'm telling you, hot.
Nice. Can you play it?
Yeah. I have many ukuleles, but that's the newest one I just wanted to share.
Nice. Every time I see a ukulele, I think of somebody from the old days. Tiny Tim. Remember Tiny Tim?
Did you have to? He ruined it. He ruined it for two generations.
Didn't he?
People who are not possibly old enough to know who it is know that name. They don't even know why they know him.
No, and it was awful. Yeah, he had the little head.
All right. Rant alert. Tiptoe Through the Tulips is a lovely little song.
Yeah.
It is a lovely little song about a secret assignation in a garden, and you're tiptoeing out the window, and you're meeting in the tulips, and he just wrecked it. So I'm here to reclaim the ukulele and Tiptoe Through the Tulips. So that's where we are today. Funny. That's where we'll start.
That's great. So, it's funny. We were talking a little bit pre-show. I didn't find out that you were the director of research at the Guild for about a year and a half. It's like, where was I? I thought you were still working for the government, and I went, oh, okay. When did that happen? You were a good choice, by the way, and we talked about that too.
2017.
So yeah, and congratulations on belated congratulations, but you're a good researcher. You've always been involved in putting out good information and writing and all the stuff you've done. How do you like it? How do you like what you're doing?
I like it. I like it very much. And for people who don't know the backstory, I worked from my 10th birthday. I went to work for the state of North Carolina as a classroom stand-up trainer a good while ago. I was very young. I had not been out of college long. And I went into a stand-up platform trainer job. I had a little bit of background in teaching. I'd been giving guitar lessons. I had a job where we had to do some on-the-job training. And the job, it just kept evolving. I worked for Health and Human Services, and then I worked for Department of Justice, and then I ended up and finished the last 15 years with Central Personnel. So it gave me a very broad perspective on a lot of different kinds of business areas. It gave me a lot of perspective on designing for varied audiences. So I want to be really careful that I enjoyed my time with the state, and people who knew me then would say I didn't complain about it. I did not find it onerous. I had good bosses most of the time. We were joking before the show started that I kind of knew how to play the government game. You have to know so that you don't go crazy. But I have a lot of friends in the private sector and friends who do freelance stuff who don't have, their problems are as equal to or maybe even worse than a lot of the ones I face. So there was that. But when I made it known that I was ready to go, I let it be known that I was going to be on the market and I would like something maybe part-time, maybe remote. And the Guild just had this wonderful opportunity for me. Patty Shank had been in this job before her. Janet Clary had been in this job. So I was following, I didn't have to go in and fix something. I was following great people. It was work I could do from home. I wasn't going to have to move to California where eLearning Guild is headquartered. And it was a chance, I had gotten my master's and then my doctorate actually, because it did help me work with the stakeholders I was dealing with in North Carolina. I mean, I was I was, it gave me a lot of grounding in talking to HR and talking to senior management. It gave words I needed to have conversations about why we wanted to do something one way, why we wanted to not do it another way, why it wasn't a good idea to have dancing cats on every screen, And it gave me a lot of credibility dealing with that level. A lot of people sort of roll their eyes when L&D shows up, that. So, the doctorate especially gave me a lot of that, but I wasn't otherwise able to use it very much. So this job with the Guild gives me a chance to actually leverage all that training I had in reading research and learning how to conduct research. And it's it's in my wheelhouse, and it's real different than what I did for 25 years otherwise. And I'm really having a good time with it. So I learn something new all the time. Every day I'm learning new stuff. So.
Which is great. So for those who don't know, what does a director of research do?
Well, this job, the Guild is primarily, it's a media company that we have a couple of conferences. We have DevLearn, and we have Learning Solutions in the spring, and then DevLearn in the fall. We also have Learning Solutions magazine. We have a community sort of structure where we have a membership set up. We have, I think it's upwards of 100,000 members now. I could be wrong about that. I could be off. And so my role in all of that is to do a deep dive into something about once a month and produce something more than an article. The articles tend to be, 1,000 words, 1,500 words. I am to do a deeper dive into something. And so some months it is something that maybe ties to one of our events, like the Realities Conference. Realities 360 is now co-located with Learning Solutions. And so last year we did something on AR, VR, not very far in advance of that. We do things that are kind of hot topics in the field. We just had Megan Torrance, but sometimes I outsource some of this, or I have people help me. Megan Torrance did a great report for us on XAPI and what the reality is about how much it's being used and where it's being used and for what. Other things that I have done is sort of a survey of the field, what looks like it's trending, what we might be seeing, and how it's going to affect us after a while. In the past, the Guild has always done a salary survey at the end of every year. And looking back over that, it was a lot of work. That kind of information is now more widely available just by Googling around. And honestly, the job market, I'm gonna be careful how I try to explain this. The job market for people like instructional designers and developers has changed in that a lot of it is work you can do remotely. So if that's the case, if an organization is hiring a remote worker, then you can live in Los Angeles or Chicago or New York or London. And so the salary numbers change now because, the fact that you're living in Chicago doesn't mean that's where the job, am I making sense? So that changed. So what I did instead last year, instead of just doing the salary report again, was I instead looked at what recruiters said they were asking for, what job postings said they were looking for. And I found out a number of things. And one of the most striking things from that data was how broad the ID role has become just in the last few years. Where even Cami Bean wrote a book 5-6 years ago called The Accidental Instructional Designer, and she had done something similar, which I didn't know till I was done with mine. But at the time, still largely I analyze, I design stuff, I meet with stakeholders, I may also run the LMS, I may make some graphics and that kind of thing. Well, now in 2019, when I did this, and I build dashboards and I build mobile apps and I do 3D video and I do VR work, and it's gone so big and so broad. So that was kind of interesting. So another thing that I have done, once in a while I grab hold of something that's just a popular topic that we hear a lot about, like learning styles or personality types or lately generations, and I do a deep dive into the literature on that. So they vary from month to month, but basically I am charged with a fairly significant piece of literature, 30 pages, 25, 30 pages every month. Did I answer your question? That was way more than you asked.
It did. That's actually quite a bit of work.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing a month, and I'm used to writing. It's not backbreaking, but I enjoy it, and I'm pretty good at what I'm doing with it.
So what surprised you? Well, obviously the instructional design market is a tough market for instructional designers. they're forcing a lot of stuff on people that may not be trained or even knowledgeable in half of what they're doing. And then they get blamed for not doing it perfectly well. It's kind of a bad place to be many times. And being remote's even harder when you're an instructional designer because you're not always touching face, or at least touching the user one-on-one when you need to. But it works. We've done it for years in-house, where we have a lot of instructional designers remotely, and it works. But there is sometimes that problem of not having somebody close by, and sometimes we have to fly people out and things, and that works too. But it is tough. I notice in the old days, I'll age myself, in the old days, back in the 90s, you had authoring tools where you had authors, and they strictly did the programming side of the authoring tools. Right. Then you had instructional designers who tended to write. Then you had, maybe QA people who did the quality on the pieces. You had graphic artists. You had a lot of different team members. And even internally, what we do as a development house, we have a lot of different people doing different tasks. You don't have that luxury in a lot of companies anymore. And instructional designers, I know, feel beleaguered, and we've talked to enough of them. It's a tough one. Do you see any remedy or anything coming on the way that may change that, or are we in for more of the same?
Well, first of all, let me get myself into some hot water. I think an awful lot of that can be tracked back, and I think you're right. Back when we had authors, they were using authorware, and it was hard. Yeah. And it could do almost all the stuff we can do now 30 years later, right? But but everybody couldn't just pick it up and start and create something tomorrow. I worry sometimes that we have kind of created our own monster by making these tools so accessible and so available and so easy to use. And yet what most people crank out is not great. I mean, they could create an online something, but it's not really very good. I worry, and I am not meaning to pick on anybody. I think I have great relationships with a lot of vendors, but I think that I learned this from Bob Mosher from a conversation years ago where he said, beware the boss who's been to a trade show. They go to some expo floor and it's like, oh, look, you can take this Lexus, you can take this Kia and shove it into our software and it'll come out a Lexus. It'll be beautiful for people. And they have demos that took years to create by an army of programmers and graphic designers. And they're like, oh, your people can do this. Just buy this. And I worry that has created this problem of every manager everywhere thinking, oh, we'll just get you the software and they can do all this stuff. Right. They read flavor of the week stuff. Oh, we need VR. Oh, we need microlearning. Oh, we need 360 video. Oh, and they don't know what they want. That came through actually in the job postings. It was evident that somebody somewhere was just either copying over old postings based on the number that wanted Flash experience, or it was just this laundry list of disparate things. Like they wanted experience with Articulate, Suite, WebEx, and Powtoon, which are, one of those is hard to learn. One of those is not even a design tool. And the other one is just a basic online thing where you drop cartoon characters in and add some music. They're so the skill level required for those three things is both disparate and completely disconnected. They don't even know what they're asking for. So back to your question, I feel like about once a year I get calls. There are schools that have programs in instructional design or training and development or HRD or whatever they call it. About once a year, the undergraduates are told they need to go interview an instructional designer or somebody in the business, and I will often get those calls. And I try to help when I can. I have just seen over the years, and this was my own experience, although I was in my 30s when I went back to get the master's, and I already had some understanding and knowledge of this. I wasn't a 23-year-old who just had never done the work. I find that the schools do not provide much in the way of assertiveness or negotiation skills, and that people become order takers, and they're just like, yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. Okay, you want stress management with a side of team building? Yes, I'll take care of it. Yes, and I don't know that they're taught to say, I can't do this. I don't know how to build an app. I'm not a programmer. I think that they aren't very, very good at that. And I think that it is the individuals who are going to have to start making some decisions about how many hats they're willing to wear and how many hats they can competently wear and still do a good job. But I think we, at some point you have to start saying no. The other thing that study gave me was there's no clear definition of instructional designer. We know what an accountant is. We know what that person does. We know what a lawyer is.
Yep.
But the instructional designers are all over the place, and some of them I remember one in particular under additional duties as needed. She was running the office blood drive. I mean, they literally everything under the sun was falling on this person, and somewhere that person needs to start saying, "Hold up." So the role is not very clearly defined. There's not any clear demarcation between a junior level and a senior level, or a basic level and a manager level. They're just all over the place, and I feel like the remedy is that the people doing the work need to start putting their foot down a little bit and start insisting on definitions. Or if they're also going to have to build web apps and learn to do 3D video and learn to program VR games, well, they probably need to start asking for more.
Yeah, and it's also and it's different. And it's different mindsets. Also, like a programmer is somebody who can think in archetypes, that can put things together. That is somewhat geeky, and they tend to be not the most communicative, but they're very good at building that kind of stuff. Giving an instructional designer who may have more of a writing background, if even, not a lot of them don't, that's tough. That's tough for them. I mean, you've probably seen it. A lot of instructional designers, and I'm not beating up on them, can't write. They're not writers. And
no,
so,
they're not.
No, and I used to tell a lot of the ones I've known in the past, I always say, take a course in screenwriting. And they look at me like, what? I don't want to write movies. No. Yeah. You want to write training that's not boring. Yeah. It helps you get a better understanding of what you're trying to write, as well as thinking a little more about emotion, thinking about placement, thinking about things that make the writing more interesting. And they don't teach that in school either. They just basically throw them into, okay, here's a curriculum. Let's go figure out what we need. Well, okay, but to really build a good curriculum, you need to know a little bit about the business maybe, or at least know what you don't know so you can ask good questions. There's not a lot of who, what, when, where, why, how. We found some of the best instructional designers that we've used in the past were those who came from journalism backgrounds, who could write, who knew how to ask questions, and worked well with people. Business analysts who didn't really want to do that but wanted to write more. Hey, here's an opportunity. Things that they weren't really that used to or knew how to do, but could pick it up easily because they had other backgrounds, especially in the writing kind of skill set areas. It's a tough one. Now, that you're right. That's one of the biggest trends that we've seen throughout the years of just the poor. I call it the poor instructional designer. Everything's on them. And it's really not. I don't believe in not fair, but boy, if anything's not fair, that's a good not fair one. Because
and part of the problem is the stakeholders often, when you're talking about the HR who owns training, is it the HR manager? Are they under some other department? Are they standalone? Very often, those people are not at all interested in the things you're talking about. They want the dancing kittens, or they want the pretty template, or they want the CEO's picture. They don't care at all about what we're talking about. They want a read and sign version of the policy as often as. I don't mean to trash all of them, but I work for a lot of these people.
Yep.
But my last manager, I was only there. We had changed governors, and I was already on my way out the door, and a manager was appointed who was completely inept at this job, and I don't mind saying that. Despite my 20 years of education, I could not help her understand the difference between design and development. And so she basically canceled all the contracts we had for developers, and programmers, and people who were doing next level stuff. And she's like, oh, you can just do all these. We'll buy you, and I won't name the product. We'll get a site license for authoring tool. For people who don't know how to do it, who don't have a background in this, who aren't good writers, who aren't good graphics people, it's just crazy.
Well, I've gotten a lot of authoring tool. I've ticked off a lot of authoring tool vendors, and I know a lot of them personally because I've said, don't rely on just one tool. You need more than one tool usually because there are different levels of tools. And
there's different things you need.
There's different things you need, and they have different approaches. There's a lot of really good tools out there, but not one of them usually can do everything.
Well, and not one of them is.
And they go, but I don't have budget. And then people say, I don't have budget.
Because we spent it all. We spent it on a $10 million LMS.
Yes, I know.
Right? This is why we don't have a budget. But anyway, back to the question. I think that one of the things we haven't even talked about yet about who's in these roles doing what, we haven't even mentioned the new move toward AI and data and big data and analytics. I mean, these people are also being asked to deal with that. And the people who have some role in things like administration, it isn't just LMSs anymore. People are starting to stack LMSs. On top of that, you've got learning experience platforms, you've got social platforms, you've got, and these smaller shops, they've got one or two people managing all this stuff. It's just it's crazy. And we wouldn't ask it of other than jobs. That's one thing I find confounding.
No. And it's kind of a shame. So what do you see as some of the trends that are salient, things that are really popping out at you that you see as effect? You mentioned AI among others. That's an interesting trend, but we can talk about that later. What other things do you see that are changing, that are either helping or complicating the situation a bit?
I think that soon, I don't know that we're there yet, I think that soon our understanding of what data we can get and how we might use it is going to be important. And for instance, it's not out yet, it's out on the 19th, but my most recent research report is a case study, a profile of a company that's here where I live out in Research Triangle Park, called the RTI Institute, Research Triangle Institute. And they are doing a whole lot of work with, they chose blockchain, AI, AR, VR, immersive learning, and that kind of thing. One of the things that we've talked about a lot is that we still have the L&D mindset of people do something and they take a test and they're complete and they move on. Where really, anytime you've got somebody doing anything on a device, anything that's mobile or they've got a wearable, we can get lots more information about that. And for instance, they were talking about personalized and adaptive learning, which are popular words in our business right now. I don't know that they're used terribly in a meaningful way, but for instance, you could have two people sent to fire training, firefighting, firefighters training, which in itself generates considerable emotion. You're thrown into a fire. With wearables and other tools, we can see, we can measure sweat levels, we can measure temperature, we can measure stress, we can look at heartbeat, we can look at pulse. And so the guy that is really at the limit of stress, we know if he's in a fire, what he can manage right then. But if this guy over here is in a pretty big fire and he's not showing many of those responses or his heart rate's not very elevated, we need to throw some more fire at this guy, right? We need to adapt it because we're not challenging him. This guy is getting what he needs and we've got him in a real... Am I making sense?
Yep.
So both of them finishing the same course and checking it off and passing doesn't mean they're equally equipped. So figuring out how we can pull that kind of data. One of the things that you can get, for instance, from virtual reality experiences is you can see where people don't look, which is new for us. It used to be you sat in front of a rectangle and you looked at things in that rectangle and we knew where you were looking. But now if you've got a virtual world experience, you can see what data people are missing, what something's not being attended to. And that's important when we start talking about safety training, regulatory training, something involves a hazardous environment. So I think that something we are moving toward is an understanding of how we could get better data and work with it. And it's not just a matter of a checkbox. So I'm hoping anyway that we will see that. I do think that we need to watch for our robot overlords. I'm sorry, but sometimes they're better than we are. They really are. And we probably need attention to what's going to get automated and what we're still going to need humans for.
Mm-hmm. Could happen, though AI is still pretty far away from being that good. The technology is getting better, but it's still very localized to certain applications where it works best. And even then, you've got to think of so many things. And even when AI is quote unquote self-learning, which is very difficult in and of itself too, it's not that easy. I think everybody's in a science fiction movie right now. We haven't gotten there, but everybody's afraid of it. And of course, you have people like Elon Musk saying the people we really need to fear in the future are the programmers. Oh, they should have been fearing the programmers years ago. But anyway, that was my background. I was a programmer and I was an IT guy way before I got into training and learning. But it's interesting because AI has improved. Actually, there's been a couple of initiatives by some big banks and other large customer service type operations, and they're all starting to pare it back down. It didn't work. People hate dealing with the AI chatbots, especially the ones with voices, and you reach their limit of capability very, very quickly.
Not me.
I don't mind them, but you usually get frustrated within about the third query because they don't go that far.
But that's not the chatbot's fault. Let's talk about that. That's not the chatbot's fault. But finish what you're saying, and then we'll talk about it.
No, and that's it. Really, that it's the programming, how we do that, and I think the programming of a chatbot is probably at this moment beyond the level of most training people to do, or even there's a lot of stuff you need to know. It is a form of object-oriented program. They're making it simpler. In fact, for example, Google, what's it called, Flow something or other, is a little bit easier. But if you look at some like Amazon Web Services, you've got to do Xcode like on a Mac. That's a lot of work. You've got to know C programming, C++. They make it not that easy. So we still need to get those programmer types to work, or developers to work with training and other professional departments to make this happen. I don't think we're there yet, but maybe 5-10 years, we might be there. I don't know what you think.
You pulled the chain on my outboard motor. No, I agree with you completely on every point. I think several things here. First of all, we already are having I see this over and over and over, so I'll go ahead and say it now. The minute a good idea emerges, somebody somewhere wants to build a rapid tool for it.
Right. Yeah.
What that rapid tool does is not the real thing. And I will say, I think it's safe to say this. We have an acquaintance, I won't mention her name, who is doing a lot of work with like introduction to augmented reality. That's her thing right now.
Yeah.
And she's great at it. And she says the minute she starts talking, a hand will go up and somebody will say, is there a rapid tool for this? Is there something I can do? And here's the thing. They don't understand the technology. They don't understand how it might be applied. They don't really have use cases. But they want to go build it badly and launch it badly, and then it's not going to go well, and everybody's going to say, well, we tried AR and it didn't work. I have seen it over and over and over again every time a technology is introduced. So I have already seen the rise of here's a quick chatbot tool that answers 3 questions and then fails. They've got people who don't know how to program this. They have people who will not do the depth of programming they need. The density, I'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
And they don't work with people who have actual real understanding about these customers. They don't know what the customer will ask them. They don't know how the customer will misunderstand. They need somebody with a really deep knowledge of the real conversations before they can program these things. I will say the best one I've seen, and a really good example of a good chatbot that works, or a good AI tool, is I want to say it's Domino's Pizza Pal. It could be Pizza Hut. I think it's Domino's Pizza Pal tool. Because the question, how may I help you? I want to order a pizza, then has 75 more questions. What size pizza do you want? Well, what is the caller going to say? What sizes do you have? How many will a medium feed? I want to feed 8 people. They don't say large meat, right? And somebody has to program, to your point, every bit of that. And then it goes into what do you want on it? And then it goes into where we're going to deliver it. And there's 75 talking points to each of those things. And only somebody really experienced it using, I know how those calls go out, but it's also not programming it in an afternoon at your desk by yourself.
No. And the other thing is most AI works best when it can match patterns.
Yeah.
And even though there are patterns in language, they're a little harder because the pattern doesn't, in and of itself, give you what you need. The words may, but when you put them all together, it may not make sense to a computer. So you've got, like we talked about earlier, off camera, about natural language processing. You've got things that aren't that easy. There was that talk about, what was it, Watson on Jeopardy? Had all the questions before. So I go, wait a minute. You gave Watson all the questions, so he won. Wow, what an amazing miracle that was. So they were ready to win, but they were testing. They said, well, he's not that far along yet. He's testing. Yeah, the permutations for AI are enormous. The amount of permutations you could have on anything are enormous, and that's why they don't go that far. it takes a lot. I mean, for our brains to be simulated, isn't that easy? They have an idea.
Well, right. And now that we still haven't figured that out, we want to go to facial recognition using that in decision making and stuff. And this was also a conversation I had out at RTI. They would really like to develop some sort of tool that will help analyze, for instance, a hiring event, a job applicants. Well, somebody might smile because they're happy. Somebody might smile because they're nervous. Yeah. Somebody may just not smile a lot. Somebody may smile, and the technology can't read that.
No,
it can't read that
the
kind
intention.
Of that kind of subtlety. Yeah. DevLearn flew Sophia Robot out for the keynote.
How did that go?
I don't know if you were there.
I was there, but we didn't go to the keynote. We weren't. We got there a little too late. But how did that work? She had on an evening gown.
She had on an evening gown. But when first of all, David Kelly. I think people thought it was gimmicky and they were going to have this act like it could replace humans. And really, he was bringing her out to show the limitations like we're talking about. And one of the first things she said to him, they were having a conversation, and everything was not pre-programmed. Her talk was pre-programmed, but every question he was going to ask was not. But she said, I don't understand sarcasm. Well, that right there's a huge limit on how well you can operate in the real world, right? I mean, right in itself is a thing. She said, I don't understand sarcasm. I have a hard time with that. Now, I think some of this will get better, but there's a difference between having a chatbot that can schedule your calendar and tell you how to spell Mississippi, and a chatbot that can interact and put your children to bed at night and sing to them and let you know if they seem uncomfortable, right? I mean, we have these unrealistic expectations, I think, sometimes of how great technology can be. I love Alexa, by the way. It didn't take me long at all to have her become part of my moment-to-moment life.
Yep.
Yeah,
let's see. We've got Alexa, Siri, Google. They are dumb as stumps more often than not. And every so often they surprise you. It's like, wow, she actually got that. But they're really not that good. Not yet. I mean, they remember things only because they file it somewhere. But that doesn't mean they'll give it back to you at the right moment. We have at lunch, a lot of us have lunch in our conference room, and we have an Alexa in there, and we're constantly just trying to see what it comes up with. And it is hilarious. It's just, they just don't get it. So then we'll take out the Google Assistant. No, not much better. Siri's off in some other country trying to figure out who or what she is. It's just, oh my gosh, it's not that good. Yeah. But they can do certain things really well. Yeah.
For $80, she does what I need. I'm not expecting her to, do everything. But anyway, back to Sophia. I really enjoyed it. I had not been around an AI robot and she's the most sophisticated. I mean, it's amazing. I thought it was interesting that immediately people assume a robot is a she, even when it's a male body.
That's right.
She was a she.
Yeah.
But it really did give you insight as to what these things can really do and what they can't do and what they're really understanding and what they're not. The programmers talked a good deal about what they had to do with her to, for instance, help her be more politically correct, to give answers that didn't cause problem. Dave kept trying to get her to choose baseball teams, and I think her answer was finally, I don't like sports or something. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
She had a kind of a smarty answer for him about it, but because he's in New York, he's a New Yorker. I will say, and I hope I'm not getting in trouble because it was my company that brought her in, but it was almost like if it's not going to actually be a human, why are you working so hard to make her look human? Because she's not. It wasn't even uncanny valley. It was just like, it's a little creepy and a little weird. I loved her, but it's a little creepy because they did do a meet and greet and you could look her in the eye. She was wearing an evening gown. And it's like, I would almost rather have like the little Pepper robot that you've probably seen. It's smaller and it's kind of androgynous and it's not so humanoid. Yeah. I was more comfortable with that than I would be with Sophia. Just sort of creeped me out a little bit. But I think when you start looking at other things that technology could do, when you can replace human security guards who are likely to fall asleep, when you can replace or supplement lifeguards who would be in danger going out to rescue. I mean, I think we have so many applications for that kind of technology. Yeah. I wonder sometime if our expectations are the right ones. I don't know that I expect a robot to be just like a human.
No, but I think part of the problem is, but if you think about it, a lot of this has been inculcated in our movies. Robots are human. Sure. In our culture. It's so people see that and go, well, isn't that what they're like? Isn't that, I mean, I don't know. I read one somewhere that half the people think Star Trek really exists. So, okay.
Okay.
You don't know. I mean, it's amazing. People believe a lot, and we're not the most scientific people on Earth. Actually, our planet is not highly scientific. And so as a result, they believe what they see in a science fiction movie. Oh, wow, look at that. We can do this. Well, not really. I mean, it's based on possibilities, but we're not really there yet. The day we get there, I don't know. It's going to be interesting if we ever get there. I still don't think you can teach a robot emotion. I know enough about programming.
Yeah,
You can fake emotion, but
don't we know humans who do?
Oh, absolutely.
Human robots who fake emotion.
Yep, that is so true. Yep, you're right.
I was reading a book. I was listening to a book on tape recently called the Psychopath something. It's a John Ronson book. Something. Anyway, I have a lot of friends who worked in corrections for years, and they're very interested in psychopathy and the psychopathy measurement and stuff. And basically, if you are a psychopath, if you're not a psychopath, you couldn't convince the world that you aren't, because they're so convincing. Go ahead and prove you're not a psychopath. You can't do it. So
that's funny.
It is kind of funny. But I will say about this whole human or not issue, the minute I met Pepper Robot, and I'm going to assume your viewers know what we're talking about. It's a little white robot, maybe 3-4 feet tall, that's on a sort of a four-wheeled pedestal.
Yeah.
And it can do things like say hello and look you in the face, and it can tell you, why, hello, Jane, you have an appointment with Dr. Zanotti down in conference room 9. He's waiting. And they can do basic stuff like that. They don't attempt to be Sophia, is what I'm saying.
Right.
And I remember I met her at a show in London. It's different when you see them in person. I can't really explain that. I had seen videos of Sophia. I had seen videos of Pepper. When you're in the room face to face with them, it is a different experience. But the moment I laid eyes on Pepper, I'm like, she could so easily replace our racist secretary. We had this receptionist who she was pretty bad. And she didn't really keep stuff to herself. She didn't. Yeah. But I'm like, we could replace you like this, and she wouldn't complain. She wouldn't complain.
That's funny.
So, I'm like, I do see some application for this. Yep. But Pepper has to be rented. They've also had trouble, and I'm going to get some of this wrong. They've had trouble, back to the security guard robots, with kids ganging up on them to try to disable them.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I could see that.
The study was more about if the parents are there, the kids don't do. The parents aren't looking, the kids start bullying the robot. It's really kind of all Lord of the Flies. Scary.
Yeah, that's why you don't want to give a robot a weapon. They'll use it.
Right. Don't give it a gun.
Yeah. And if we ever get phasers, we're dead.
I know. So anyway.
Well, Jane, we are just about. Actually, we're way out of time, but who cares? We're having a good time.
I thought this was an hour.
I know we've been going on a little. We started a little bit late, but we're almost an hour. That was fun.
But I haven't even talked about learning styles or personality assessments or generations research.
No,
yet.
So you have to come back on.
I've been ranting about robots and stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, I am very excited about the future. I do think that we're going to have to start making decisions about what our goals are and what we realistically can do and be competent at and make some choices. I think that's just gotta. We can only hold so much in that one bucket. But I'm very excited about some of the technologies that are coming. I think that there's some real exciting stuff on the horizon, and I hope that we step up to that. One of the things I saw happen with e-learning was that when training was really resistant to that, the vendors learned to go to IT, and IT started making authoring tools and what courses we were buying. And I hope, our research on AR/VR said that many companies. They are creating AR/VR, or they're outsourcing it, but it's happening outside of training, like the L&D R&D department is doing it, or sales is doing it. I hope we step up and say, where we are still part of the conversation about some of these things. So we need to fight and hold on.
That's a whole conversation about proactivity in the industry. It's a tough one.
Well, and at some point we got to decide: are we going to just build courses, or do we do other things?
Yeah. Yeah. I still have the same. It's kind of a corollary. It's not a corollary. It's a theorem that nobody does training unless they have to. A lot of companies could care less about training, but they have to. The minute they don't have to, training's gone. It's a sad reality because, but it's a lot, not all companies, but there are some there's quite a few actually that could care less about training. Big companies tend to train more because they have to. Too many people.
Right. Well, but I'm not suggesting that there's no training. It may just not be sitting in front of a screen and clicking a next button. It may be doing a VR experience where you're going down in a mine or you're disabling bombs, or it may just not be a course with a quiz and a completion form.
It's interesting you're saying that too, because all of that right now, the military does a lot of that, police departments, fire departments, they do a lot of work with simulators. But it hasn't trickled down in other areas like it could or should. It'd be really fun if it did. It would change a lot of things. And if people could, like you said, get into it, wow, that would make a big difference.
I think there are opportunities to be an ID who has a special subspecialty in VR experiences or some. I think that would be a remarkably marketable thing someday.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I call it the Second Life problem. The first time I ever saw Second Life, a friend of mine was going on and on about this fabulous, cool virtual world and and the first thing they showed me was a virtual trainer standing behind a virtual podium showing virtual slides to a virtual audience. I'm like, really? Really?
Yep.
Old practices we have got to stop. I don't want to go into your VR experience of an HR manager handing me forms. Oh my Lord. So anyway.
You know what's funny about Second Life? You know what it's become, right?
Not really. I haven't kept up.
It's almost a porn site now. Let me put it to you that way.
It still exists.
It exists, but it's not what it used to be. I don't think anybody builds islands anymore, except probably, I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Epstein kind of islands. It's scary.
Islands we don't want to go to.
Yeah, islands that are just not good. Anyway. Yeah. Well, hey, Jane, it's been an absolute pleasure. You got to come back on. We got to keep doing this.
We'll talk about learning styles and personality types and generations, because I had a lot of stuff for that. I didn't realize we were stopping right now. So okay,
So we've been an hour already, but you know what? Definitely, okay. I'll call and schedule you on quickly, so we can continue and keep the momentum going. Okay. Are you going to any shows soon? Where anybody can get a hold of you, contact you?
I just got back from LearnTech in Germany, and that was a lot of fun. I didn't do OEB this year, and that's kind of why I didn't make it to London for what's going on there now. I had just gotten home from Europe. I've got I've got Learning Solutions in
next month, right?
At the end of March.
Yep.
Then I've got New Zealand ATD in May. I've got eLearning DevCamp in June. I am doing the iSpring conference in Russia in October.
iSpring, they're doing a conference. Interesting.
They do a user conference in Russia every year. Joe Ganshi is gone. They've asked me a couple times. This was the first time we scheduled it. And then I've got DevLearn in November, and I've got some ATD chapter meeting kind of things along the way. Those are the big trips coming up.
Nice. That'll keep you busy.
I'm going to get trouble. Yes, I try to do better. About a trip a month, conference a month, something like that.
Well, anyway, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best place? Just go to the Guild and send you a note?
Go to the Guild and send me a note. You can always find me on Twitter. That's the fastest place to find me.
Okay.
If you need something. But yeah, go to the Guild, I suppose.
Sounds great. Well, Jane, a pleasure again as always. Have a great rest of the week and all the travels. Have fun. Hope we meet up again one of these days.
We're seeing Mean Girls tonight at theater.
The original Mean Girls?
Is Tina Fey's Broadway show. Yeah. Well, it's original.
Oh, it's a Broadway show. Oh, yeah. I'm thinking of the movie. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's from that, but now it's a musical. So we're going. Wow. So anyway, all right. Well, take care.
Have a good one. Thanks a lot. And for all you people watching, thank you much. And we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.